comfortable to share, right? Celebrities were coming out about it and
Yeah.
stuff. Sorry, I'm grabbing my tea. And it made me feel like it was being less judged, right? It wasn't as like big of a deal because they
Yeah.
kind of normalized it in a way.
Yeah, I think like it's only for us, it's a big deal. Like once we get out from that mindset that we don't, not like we don't care sharing, but it's hard for us to share. But once we put it out there, it just becomes easier. And once we see that we're helping people by sharing, because we all know, like I'm sure once you started sharing, it
Um,
actually made you feel better, right? That it's not a
yeah,
secret that you are
was,
keeping.
I was diagnosed in 1998. So there was really little information about MS out there. There was like three drugs on the market. And there was very little known about pediatric MS. And there at that point, my parents are very corporate in that world. And at that point, people were like, if she tells employers, she won't get a job because there was no Obamacare and stuff. So hearing that as a kid, I automatically was like, oh, this is something to be ashamed of, right? It's
Yeah,
so sad.
it's so sad.
And
It's
it's just when I told people about 5 years ago, I came out with it more publicly, and I went to my first MS event, Dunk MS, which I hosted last year, or I was the MC, I mean. And it was the first time I was around other people like or to that magnitude with MS, and it was super emotional. And at that point, I had been making social media, and so many people came up to me or said something, and that was really like it was very overwhelming for me in a good way.
yeah, I feel the same way. I only, I, it wasn't something similar, but we just published a book. I'm sure you know about it. And people reaching out to me, it feels so emotional, but at the same time, it's such a good feeling that
Yeah,
it's, I wish
and that you're
everybody
able to
experienced this
help
feeling.
people, like having the disease for so long, when people are diagnosed, they have so many questions about things. And that, not that I'm an expert, but I'm experienced, right? So just helping
Yeah,
other people and like making sure they don't go through what I went through. And you have a
yeah,
slew of experiences that like other people can't relate to, or other people look to as like inspiration or not feeling alone.
yeah.
I think isolation is one of the toughest things with this disease. Um, it's really hard to connect to people sometimes. And they say, you have a chronic illness when all your best friends are on the online, on the internet. Very true.
Yes. Um, yes, it's very true. I remember when I started following you, you were posting more about healthy diet, lifestyle. Like, I know you are into that. When was this shift? Because being as young, 10 years old, like, I'm sure you started learning about this also, this
Well,
side of
the
how,
thing is,
how to
being
manage it.
a child going through puberty also, like it was hard for my parents because they didn't know if these drugs were a lot of the cause. I was on steroids multiple times throughout childhood because that was kind of like, oh, you get sick, send her to the
Yeah.
hospital for steroids. And every time with pediatric MS, the flare-ups seem to be like extreme, right? But I was very
Yeah.
responsive to steroids, so I recovered well. That being said, long story short, the steroids made me gain so much weight because I was on them for an entire summer. I was on oral steroids, and when I graduated, I'm small. I'm like 115, 110 pounds, and when I graduated eighth grade, I was 160, which was
And nobody kind of, the
but like
doctors don't tell these side effects,
kid,
when
you
it
don't
comes to
know how
steroids.
to eat properly. And this is once again 1998. There
Yeah.
wasn't all this information. And in high school, I was very angry about my disease. You know, it felt very unfair.
Mm.
Other people my same age weren't going through it. And I was very determined to do everything that a healthy person was doing. So I started rowing, which gave me an outlet to be like angry. And that really propelled me and made me good at the sport. And just from being an athlete, and I was we were nationally ranked. I was very into health and fitness and working out because I saw crew change my body, right? So I lost all that weight because
Mm.
of the sport, because of working out to that extent. And that just kind of stayed something important to me throughout my entire life. I was like, yeah, my body changed. Like, look what I can do. And just those types of habits really carry you along. And then, I started realizing, because I was in a wheelchair for a little bit, lost control of my leg. I started realizing when in my 20s that, like, I can use this to make my disease better. And
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
directly
Yeah.
say, but not
I,
like, I mean, now they say it, but they never were like,
yeah.
you staying healthy and being in remission and stuff could be from your health, like fitness, eating, exercise. And now we know that it's huge contributor. Did I freeze?
Can you
I can
hear me? I
hear
think you
you.
are.
Come on, Instagram, get it together. Can you hear me?
Yes. I did not realize that you were in wheelchair. And I want to pause here. Hold on. You paused actually. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear
Yes.
off the Wi-Fi?
So it's when the doctor present me the concept of wheelchair with this disease, they didn't say that you you can be in wheelchair, but it's not decline from there. You can still get out from wheelchair. And I feel like that's what we are missing. And I feel like that's why I'm sharing my story and sharing this book and everybody's else story is because like you, these people, some of the people were in wheelchair and they get their health back, and that's the message that it's very, very important. And I'm so happy to see you thriving and living life to the fullest,
Yeah.
having a
And,
career. It's amazing.
it takes a huge part of acceptance, right? Like there's a point where it's just it's not worth being angry. It's not worth, I mean, obviously the anxiety of the disease is always going to be there. Uh, but, someone was messaging me about having an MRI, and they were like, I'm so nervous that like it's going to be bad, like that there will be all these new lesions. And I said to her, I was like, that's that's the reality, right? But I was like, it could also be good, right? So like let's try to go into the
Yes.
situation like hoping for the best and being confident that even if it is not good, we can deal with it, right? Everyone is given their own
Yeah.
cup of issues or whatever to fill. And she came back from the doctor's visit and the MRI, and she was like, "It was great." And I was like,
But I truly believe that you can cause the lesions by being nervous and being anxious and being stressed out. And MRI just alone brings you so much stress. That's why I decided I'm not getting any MRIs anytime soon until I kind of
yeah,
feel that I
the
need
problem
one,
is with like they say doing something like that is if there is a new lesion, right? Which like detects and gives you an idea of the progression of the disease. So, right, they might want to change course of medication.
But again, I don't want to argue with you. I completely agree. But they also tell you that the
Well,
progression is going to happen no
you're
matter
in
what.
remission, right? So remission is where
But like I'm
oh,
talking
okay, I
about
get
throughout the
so I've
years. Like it's not
been in
something that it
remission for like
stops.
12 years, which is like
Amazing.
thank you.
Yes.
But
Congratulations.
my disease had a lot of progression in the beginning. And love my dad. But he said like when I was a kid. He was like, I didn't know if you were going to be in a wheelchair by 16. Like there was so much misinformation, and it it like my heart goes for people,
Broke your heart.
because more commonly it takes forever to people get diagnosed because they have these symptoms that like look like they could be a million other things, or individually it's like, oh, it's not a huge concern. And I feel for that so bad because people go years without being diagnosed, like a lot of damage, or not damage, but the disease can be manifesting and doing things, and people just don't know
Yeah.
about it. But it's really hard because how do we, I don't even have a perfect solution for how doctors diagnose. I was talking to a friend and she had gone, Mary, talking to Mary, she's on, hi. Um, she was, she was having spastic pains, like numbness, and they thought it was related to like something like a pinched nerve. The chiropractor, that
Yeah.
specialist, has no idea. Like, oh, let me suggest getting a full, like an
Yeah.
MRI.
Yeah, everybody has different symptoms, and so I try to look at it as we have an autoimmune disease, and there is a lot of similarities in all autoimmune diseases. Basically, your body is attacking itself. So yes, yeah, they diagnose you with MS or Hashimoto, or doesn't matter with what, but it goes back to the root cause, and it goes back how to heal yourself. And the doctors can give you like, yes, this is the diagnosis, but they only can give you medicine. They're not gonna tell you like you have to change
Are
your
you
diet. I wish they do. I really
are you on
do.
medication?
I'm sorry. I I was about to start, but I became pregnant, and then I was breastfeeding, and then I
You
was ready to start again, and I
so
became
that's
pregnant
interesting
again.
because
So
um, and it's just so like my aunt has MS, but she's not blood related. She's never taken meds. Like the course of people's disease can be a lot different. For me, medication was like a very
yes,
important thing because I was so young, right? And like we were nervous about how it would manifest or how it would carry out over the years. But it's interesting because when I was 24, I went to my neurologist, Dr. Kinkle. He's been my doctor for like 19 years, which is insane, especially when I was living in Boston and then he ended up moving here. Um, I went to him when I was 24 and I was like, because hadn't been thinking about kids before that. And I was like, wait, I can't have kids without going off my meds and I'll be sick and everything. And I was like, I went to my mom and I was like, why didn't you tell me? She's like, I didn't want to tell you until like it kind of came up because like, you weren't thinking about kids as a kid. And since then, my doctor, uh, Dr. Kinkle's pretty well known in the neurology community because he was one of like the first pioneers as an MS specialist. If he ever retires, I'm screwed. And they've done trials. There's women who have had babies staying on Sabri. So,
yeah. I know. I feel like everybody's
right.
personal decision when it comes to that. And I also know so many people who were on medication, so and who are on medication and doing amazingly. And when
Well,
they stopped, they
of
were having
course, he told
symptoms.
me that. I
So
was
yeah,
like, because, like, look at the whole process. I'd have to go, it would take 4 months for me to get the drug completely out of my body. So that's 4 months of not on the medication. And last time I took like a holiday from the medication, I got hit with a double flare up. He was like, after 4 months, like, you might have a flare up. And it was horrible. I was having seizures in my face. I couldn't speak right because I had numbness and stuff. It was just really bad. But you know, it would take 4 months for me to go off the medication. Then who knows how long it would take to conceive? And 9.
yes, yes, yes. And it's so stressful. That period is the most stressful thing. That's why I feel like it's very lucky that I became pregnant and I didn't have to, overthink the whole thing. But Tysabri wasn't good for me. It was I am GC positive. That's why it was Acrobus, and Acrobus was yes, wait 6 months and then 6 months out of your body, and then I'm like I'm
Yeah,
35. I cannot wait another 10
35
years
too.
to
And
get pregnant.
me
You
and
know?
my fiance, my fiance, he's now my husband. There's a concern, so we're planning on freezing an embryo just so it's always, I mean, knock on wood, that's expensive and storage fees. But, ideally, what I'm hoping is I can use a surrogate because, like, I don't know how my
Yeah.
body's going to react. I don't know the exhaustion. Like, I rather, I was talking to my friend Corey who has endometriosis yesterday, and she was saying, like, I rather someone else incubate it because, like, you only have so many eggs, you only have so many chances of doing it. Someone else who probably might have an easier time without all these complications and things would be my preference.
Yeah. I can only share my experience. The pregnancies both were amazing.
That's
Like
typical.
I felt better than I feel now. But after, when you have the baby and you have to take care of the baby,
How
and that's
that
really
process with you?
is on your
Like,
body.
what has been hard about having a child? Because, luckily my husband is there's no question. If we had a baby, he would pick up a ton of slack. That's just his personality.
That's amazing. I assume you don't want to breastfeed, and that's perfectly fine. Then that's great because I was nursing, so I had to be up every 2, 3 hours, and then when you don't sleep, that's the hardest thing on your body, you know. So I wasn't recovering fast enough. I was just constantly exhausted, and I was focusing on my diet. I couldn't eat because I had no time, you know. So, and my husband was also helping, but when it comes to nursing, you have to be there. He cannot do that. And if you try to pump, that's even worse because then all your time is goes to pumping. So it's just, but thank God that that's only like lasted for a few months. And now it's still like my daughter is 2 years old and she still wakes me up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock
Well,
in the
I tell
morning.
people,
So
I'm
if
like,
it's
look,
hard.
like, even with Dan, I'm like, I know, like, I'm exhausted and stuff. When I don't have something big to do, like, I don't have a modeling job for the day, or I don't have a ton of places to be, it's kind of like my body's like, ooh, let's be extra tired because I'm to be tired. And I always say, like, if something's going on, magically, we know how to push through it. You get the So I feel like with the
Yes.
child, because the importance of taking care of the child, it almost propels.
Or you will push through no matter what. You've been diagnosed with MS at age 10. You push throughout the year. So I'm not even like worried. You're gonna push through
Yeah,
having taking care of a baby.
yeah, it's
It's just
and like I know that's one of the big concerns. And one of the questions I've been getting a lot now is things about like dating, right? When did you have MS prior to being married or after?
well, it was right after my miscarriage, and it was
Yeah,
eight
so
months after
you
we
know,
got married.
people are very concerned about like when you tell people and stuff. And my response is always like finding the person you deserve, um, keeping your standards high. Like, let's not settle for someone who maybe doesn't support you in a way that actually is helpful. Because when you do find the right person, there's a lot of different things that come to play. People are empathetic. People care more about like
Yeah.
your personality and who you are than necessarily your health situation. Other people like understand everyone's got
Yeah.
their own crap, right?
And if somebody it feels like they don't want to be with you because you have MS, then you
Right.
shouldn't
And
keep that person. Period. But of course, I don't think it's a good idea
right.
discussing this
I
on the
mean,
first date,
like
right?
for me, I was dating guys throughout my life and I never never told them, right? So it became the situation where like they would say like I love you, and I was like, do I really love you? Because there was a part of me they didn't know. So I didn't feel necessarily loved
Yeah.
and connected because I'm lying, right? And so when I finally started
Yeah.
telling people, I finally started telling some friends, there was a depth and connection because they felt like, oh, they understand me better. So, you know, first
Yeah.
date, no reason to tell you. But if there's some reason that has been like, oh, you were at the I heard you at the doctor's yesterday. Like, why were you there? You know, it sometimes used
Yeah.
to be good to tell them right off
Yeah.
because like how they react. I'm very much like direct. I'm like, I don't have time to deal with somebody who's not supportive, who's not going to be there. Bye. Right? But it depends on your comfortability. It depends how you feel,
Yeah.
how comfortable you are. But I'm a big advocate for being upfront about it just because like you know instantly whether it's a big deal or not.
Yes, yes, definitely. And you cannot leave lying anyway
And
and
people
hiding
had
something.
only been it has only been like beneficial for me. And to be honest, I was single for 7 years because I came out of a great relationship and my expectations were very high. I was like, I am religious, and I was like, you know, like we're supposed to be treated as queens, and I was like, and I deserve such, right? My husband sent me flowers before we even met face to face in person. Like we FaceTime. And some people were like, didn't that freak you out? I'm like, no. Like, oh, it's weird. He sent me flowers like before we met in person. I'm like, you don't, are you crazy? How mistreated have you been? Like, let's up the bar here, right? Just because I have a disease doesn't mean I need to compromise or think that I need to be treated differently. So I do
Yeah.
plan on talking about dating and partners a lot because that's come up a lot for me. I'm asking a lot of mom questions. Like, what is kind of the biggest questions people ask you? Is it health and wellness related? Is it
Yes, it's mostly health and wellness and just coping in the beginning after you get diagnosed. I get a lot of messages. I think this is why I came up with the idea of this book, because I remember when I was diagnosed, I had so many questions and I couldn't find answers, and about diet, about lifestyle, I mainly wanted to see people who are thriving with the disease, and that was hard on social media. And once I find one or two accounts, I started following them, and I just reached out to them to share their story in the book. And
yeah.
everybody is just, just like you. It feels so good to be honest and
And
to
my big
share and
thing, like,
help.
as a kid, I never saw anybody who went from a child to an adult and was living like a good life. So I actually had no dreams whatsoever of what I could be in the future because I was like, who knows what my future could be like? Like, what's the point? And I really started, part of the reason also I came out with it, I was like, oh, I could be encouragement for people. Like, look how my life has been. And that child I was like, I never want someone to feel that way. You know, there are a lot of not negative images, but you see the whole spectrum of the disease. And I do think it's important for people to be like, oh, look at this chick who's had it for 25. Look what her life is. Like, maybe that could be me.
Yeah. I feel like we are on the same mission here, because I actually have two girls who are diagnosed at age 15, 12 in the book, sharing their story, very similar than yours. And I feel like the book was basically like, I want this book to be out for years and years. And if somebody finds it, they can just like, oh, chapter 7, her Instagram account is here. So let's see how she's doing, just to prove that, change the message around MS and about the wheelchair, that it's related to MS, and I have nothing wrong with wheelchair. I'm just talking about, the symbol
And
of
it's interesting
MS, and that's
because
so
as a
sad.
kid, I
That's
was like, I don't want to know anything. Like, I don't want to think about how I'm sick. And actually, educating yourself is a real way to deal with empowerment. I know someone just was saying that they feel very trapped by all their emotions. It just is, they're overwhelmed. They have a ton of them. And honestly, like, part of those emotions is fear. And in reality, the percentage of people who are dependent on a wheelchair is very small. It's not that as big as people think.
yeah,
The percentage of people walking with mobility aids or using them occasionally is bigger,
yeah.
but knowing the research, knowing how the disease can be, understanding the whole thing can be a way to deal with those emotions.
Yeah.
But also, you're going to go through the whole slew of emotions, like,
And doesn't matter if you have
right.
MS or not.
Right.
Life
And
is
I
all about
understand that getting
emotions.
diagnosed is new. And you're like, what? Like, my life is changing because of this disease, and it's changing in ways I don't want it to. But you have the disease, and it's going to be for the rest of your life. And you don't want your emotions to ruin your life, right? You don't want, like,
Yeah.
if you're like, oh, I'm not going to get better, I'm going to pass away, like, or not pass away. Sorry, that people don't die because of you. Them people will pass. There's complications. Um, but you can't live a fulfilling life if you're just complete.
Constantly worry and constantly have negative thoughts, because we all know how powerful is the mind, and just attacking all this negative
Someone,
thinking is not going to be
yeah,
great.
someone's
I'm
talking
sure you
about a
know that.
Dear Gabby podcast, saying it has been so helpful with fear. So, like, people are dealing with the same things. Definitely check that podcast out. I'm actually going to look at it. I haven't heard it, and there probably are some nuggets of information that are, good to share, or, that I don't even know. I'm sorry, I'm trying to some of the questions.
I didn't even see any of
Yeah,
these questions. I'm
going to
scrolling them
use
to see.
the time to visualize myself. I love that. Honestly, therapy, huge difference. And it's funny because my parents were therapists when I was a kid. I've actually probably been to 15 therapists through my life. And I wasn't accepting of it, right? I fought on it. And actually being accepting and using therapy the way it can benefit you is really life changing. So I really advocator of therapy. It's nice because a lot of healthcare plans
Yeah,
are
me
covering
too.
it that. Um, I'm also looking at this. Are you a big advocate for therapy too?
Yes, yes. When I was diagnosed, I actually had a therapist, and then I switched to a different one because we moved and COVID and everything just happened. But yeah, I feel like without a therapist, I don't know if I would move on so fast, overnight almost, and accept the fact, and yes, let's start life over, basically. And 100% you need a therapist. I think even healthy people, without MS, needs a therapist, just to have somebody that you unload your brain, your mind, your
Someone
thoughts.
was
It's
saying
so
talk about
helpful.
my diet. So I mentioned this earlier. I was a pretty big athlete in high school, and like not drinking soda, um, eating very like good, but I did eat a lot of carbs because I was carb loading for races and stuff. But after that, being healthy and was so important. And then moving to LA, then more information came out about eating properly. And LA has a lot of gluten-free options. So
Yes, I'm actually jealous. New York just started to have more,
so
but
my
it's so
number one
hard to find good
thing
restaurants.
that I do is I don't eat. I like very rarely eat processed food. So looking at the
Yeah.
nutrition labels is really important, right? Eat protein, no added like sugar, low salt. Like I buy everything like pretty pure. And then I add salt to it while I cook. That's fine. I just don't want processed food in the
With
right?
other
So even like
ingredients in it, yes.
tomato sauce can have a ton of sugar. Look for a tomato sauce that has zero sugar. Try to keep the salt low and use that rather than have of sugar in it.
Right.
A few.
Do you look at
Oh
the
yeah,
ingredients? Do you
yeah,
look at the section where it says ingredients? Because that's the only thing I'm checking these days. If I know all the ingredients, it doesn't have something made in lab. I recognize every single one of them, and it's less than 8. Because if it's a long list, then I'm not
right.
even touching the product, or I'm putting it back in the shelf. But yes, the ingredients
And what
are
someone
my
was
main
talking about, so
thing.
that's kind of my spiel on diet. Gluten free, dairy free. Also, mistakes happen, right? I had cake the other day. Clearly not gluten free or sugar, you know, but we have to live our lives. They say the 80-20 is a good example, or like 90-10, right? You can be good for like 90% of the time, and 10% of the time, like, don't stress about it, right?
Your body will tell you, trust me. Once you start eating clean and add, or not cheat, but eat something bad, then your
Right.
body's gonna tell you like,
And
okay,
kind
this is not
of the
something you should put
outcome.
in me.
Someone was talking about, this is something interesting to me too. A lot of people being diagnosed with multiple chronic illnesses. So I never really have thought about, oh, like I'm a big problem with dizziness and like fainting kind of stuff. And that could be another disease. So it's been really interesting that people have been getting multiple diseases and diagnoses. Do you have any other diagnosis?
No, I'm seeing a functional medicine doctor, and I'm getting my blood work done, and she is very like she tests everything, and when I
Mhm.
have a complaint, she has a solution for that, and I didn't really I didn't really have any other symptoms since my diagnosis, and I'm happy to say that I didn't have any major relapses. I had face numbness here and there, but
Yeah,
dizziness, no,
something now
thank
that
God.
they
I don't
would
know what I
admit
would
me
do with
for, right?
dizziness.
So whenever I had, like, let's say my hand, we wanted to see how that progressed because sometimes it just goes away on its own. It's
Yeah.
funny because I said the other day, I was like, if anyone else, like normal person, was in my body, they'd be freaking the hell out, right? But like we end up getting used to at some point and are like, okay, numbness in my hand. I'm not going to freak out. It could pass by itself. Let's see how it progresses. It's not really the end of the world. Someone asked me if I eat fruit. Definitely eat fruit. You know, it's important to understand, like, let's not eat fruit all day, but fruit is totally natural. It has natural sugars, not added
Yeah.
sugars. So that's something I will do. Um,
I actually replaced sugar with fruit. Instead of eating sugary desserts, I just put some almond butter on strawberries,
right.
blueberries. They
And
are
we
super
definitely
healthy.
do
You have
need,
to.
when you're
Yeah.
eating like very clean, you do need to like add salt to things. Salt is important as much as people are like, don't eat salt, it's bad for your.
I'm actually considering taking my own salt to restaurants because all the restaurant salts are so bad. But if you take like a
I
Himalayan salt or sea
get that.
salt, that's healthy. They have so much minerals
I
in it
had
that your body
no
needs.
idea
I
that
use salt
restaurant
all the
salt was
time.
bad. Like I know that would have
Yeah, they use the ionized,
when
the processed salt that you don't really know. It's the same thing
yeah.
as
So
buying
the
tomato
other thing
sauce in
is
the.
about diet. I don't eat out a ton, right? Because first off, healthy food at a restaurant, crap. Like it's healthy food at a restaurant like isn't as enjoyable. It's usually like 600 food to taste good. They're gonna use a lot of butter. They're gonna use salt. So I don't find that I need to salt my stuff at a restaurant, but I don't eat out very often because honestly, I'm a better cook. Like I can make food at home that's healthy and tastes better, and I know all the ingredients. I don't have to guess. So I we limit the amount of we maybe go out to dinner like 3 times a month, but we do order takeout sometimes. Like we'll every 2 weeks we'll probably have like Indian or something because that's something we enjoy. But
You know, the reason I completely, I wish I can
I,
eat homemade food every night, but I have a husband and he loves to go out, and sometimes you make compromises. He he was very supportive, and he's still very supportive with my MS and the whole diet change and the
Mm-hmm.
whole everything, around us. But I have to make him happy too by going to restaurants. And yeah, it's super hard to order. Like everything has to be either salad or simply grilled, no butter. And you have to speak up when you go out. Tell the waiter that you have all this allergy. Meanwhile, it's not true. It's not
Yeah.
like you have an allergy, but just
I
like,
mean,
and
people
then,
always ask for gluten-free
yeah.
options, but also like I'm a big foodie and my family's like very into my dad's like extremely good cook and stuff. Actually we never went a kid because he's like, I can make better food and it's cheaper. Um, and the money wasn't a problem. But I if I'm going to a really good restaurant, my question is always like, what do I have to have that's on the menu? Right? Like it depends where I'm going, depends like where I am. The other thing is alcohol. Do you drink alcohol? I'm like asking all these questions. Do you drink alcohol?
I used to a lot, and I used to have really bad hangovers, and the answer to hangovers were Advil and another beer to get rid of the hangover, the whole thing. But now, no, I stopped drinking alcohol, and when we go out, maybe a glass of Prosecco. I know it has sugar in it, but I tested it out, all of them, one by one, glass by glass, and that's the only thing I don't feel like hangover
So
or bad next day. But not every time. Last night I had Pellegrino. That's my water. That's my drink with some lemon, and that's it. And it's so interesting how you can transform. I always thought that I need alcohol to relax, to enjoy myself, to be social. I don't need that anymore. And it's a mindset. I feel like that's what it comes down to. Like I don't need to drink to feel good. But yes, to answer the question, no,
so
I rather
I
not.
do drink
What
alcohol.
about you?
I don't go out like obviously there's some weekends where I'm like I'm not going out. And if that's the case, I'm obviously not drinking alcohol really at home. But I do like to go out and have a fun time. That's just always been a part of my life. I've kind of always been a partier. And part of me sometimes is just willing to sacrifice or deal with how it's going to feel the next day because like I really enjoy being around my friends and being out in Venice and going to bars for games and stuff. So, you know, I just say like you got to understand what's for your body. Someone was saying that like being super strict that people can enjoy themselves. Totally agree. But if people are like, this is the best for me, I don't want to deal with how it feels afterwards, then that's fine. For like going, just not worth it for
Yeah,
me. Everyone's
yeah.
different.
And I feel like friends and people that influence you play such a good role when it comes to this. Because if somebody is your friend is like, let's go out, let's have a drink, and they make you feel bad that you don't want to do that,
Well,
that's the problem. I feel like you kind of have to separate yourself because you know your body better and you know what you can do. You cannot be influenced by other people when it comes to
right.
managing your
And
MS.
like, that's the other thing we have to look at friends, right? Having friends in your life who make you feel bad or make you feel like less than, or for me it's like I don't want to leave girlfriends and be like, what are they saying about me? Right? That's my number one. I'm like, the second I feel like that, I find some new friends. So really looking at like your friends should make you feel like loved no matter like kind of no matter what. Like that's okay. The invite thing is always difficult. And I have some like amazing friends in my life who are like just very compassionate about it. If I need to talk about it, that's fine. But there are people out there who are understanding, who's not going to make you feel like that. Like, for instance, I'm really good friends now with Brittany, a hot mess. And like, I love her, right? I still apologize for some things. I'm like, hey, I looked at that photographer you worked with and I reached out. I'm like, because sometimes girls are weird with that. And she's like, whatever, honey. Like, I don't care. Like, that's just, and I'm like, those type of friends are really important to have in your life. And I know someone said they lost some of their friends for the diagnosis. It's painful, it hurts, but bye. At least you're being honest, and like you don't feel like you have to lie about things. There are amazing people out there who are willing to be supportive. Find people in your town, right? I've connected with so many LA people who have MS, and like we get together, we'll go out to dinner. Sorry. I'm like, I have to sneeze. Or throw up. Um, like I know you feel people are talking, I'm like, I know you feel isolated, but that's the great thing about social media too, and finding some people who can understand. I hope that you feel a little less isolated, because like us talking about MS here, I really do hope that helps people. But this disease just kind of shows up in so many ways in our lives.
Yes, it's there every single minute, even though you are trying not to live with it, but it's a constant reminder. And I also think that it's good to acknowledge that it's there, because it's easier to kind of live with it. If you keep pushing it away, like, no, I don't have symptoms today, I'm okay. It's you have to realize, like, okay, maybe I have a numbness, or I have face tingling or something, and that's gonna pass. It's much easier to cope with this. But yes, having friends, I feel like since I started my Instagram account when I was diagnosed, I made so many new friendships, and whoever was my real friends, they are still my real friends, and whoever wanted to kind of turn their life different way, that's fine too. And this is where mindfulness comes to, and meditation and therapy, like we talked about it. It's so important just to, like, what I learned, and I'm gonna share, is once you forgive somebody that what they did, or they're not your friends, they don't want to be your friends, it's so much easier to move on.
Well,
Forgiving, it's
exactly. And
kind
part of
of
forgiving is putting yourself in the other person's shoe, right? There's not something wrong with me. It's the other person. They're uncomfortable being friends with you because it makes them think about what could happen in their life, right? Some people are like very uncomfortable with that, and that's fine. But we have to remember that it's not a reflection on us, or there's nothing wrong with us. And that's just on them, right? Like I have a friend who stunningly gorgeous. She doesn't have MS or anything, but she started this new veterinarian job, or she's in learning. And the girls, she was crying the other day because the girls were so mean to her. And I'm like, girl, like people are going to bully you for something like this. Like that's just how it is, but it's not on you, right? I was bullied as a kid, and it was very hard, but like looking back on it, I feel bad for those girls. Like I feel bad that they were insecure. So
yeah.
someone who doesn't want to be your friend because you're diagnosed with a disease, it's like I feel bad for you because you're scared of like what life could be,
Yeah.
or you're so frightened to be around me, right?
And the best thing you can do, I hope you're never going to face something like this in your life, or anything similar, because then I hate to
And
call it
people say
karma, but
like they're like,
yes.
it's so hard to connect people because a lot of people don't understand, right? But I was talking to my friend who has endometriosis, that there's a level of depth and compassion and empathy and understanding other people's situation from being diagnosed with this illness. As much as like I wish I wasn't diagnosed with MS, I wouldn't really change it at this point. It's brought me to so many different avenues that kind of are in line and have kind of led me that way, that it's been wonderful. And I feel like I have a lot more wisdom than some people sometime, and I'm like, I'll take that.
Yes, you're incredible when it comes to that. Yes. And I'm also thankful for the diagnosis. And the first time I said it out loud, it sounded like, why am I saying that? And I actually get criticized by people like, how can you be thankful for an MS diagnosis? But it's just, I feel like I got a new life, you know. I was able to put my life back together, leave my pants behind, and start over. And luckily, I was diagnosed the right time before my pregnancy, so I was able to kind of change. And you just have to, basically, you just have to look at the bright
And
side of everything.
you have
That's
to
what it comes down
realize
to.
how strong you are, right? Like I said, people would freak out if they're in our bodies, right? Like they'd be like, "Why is my leg going like this? Why is it numb?" Um, we deal with this like for the rest of our lives. The fact that like we are strong and resilient enough to like be positive or keep going even when people don't understand is amazing. Like we really have to start thinking about it like that. And it's funny because I started to see people celebrating like MS milestones, and I through the 25 years like I never celebrated anything because I was like, this is not something to be proud of. And I had my 150th, and I was like, I am celebrating that because like first off, that's crazy. But like it feels good because it's not a celebration of something bad, it's a celebration of our ability to stay strong and be resilient and to deal with this disease that can lead to so many bad mindsets about things. So I think it's really important to be proud. And my friend Brittany, a hot mess, she celebrated her 4 year. It was so fun. We got dressed up ridiculously, and like I wore a whole sequence gown, right? I walked in to the restaurant. It's not Maggiano's, but it's like kind of similar vibe. And I was like, I'm here for the overdressed party because literally everyone was wearing sparkles. Like it was such a fun thing. It was fun to be together by so many people who you could relate to and who had similar like stories or experiences. So like we don't get to dress up all the time. We don't go out all the time. Like, do it big, you know? Like, fun. So I really, and it kind of puts a different spin on the way you think about the disease.
Yes, yes, for sure. I was just reading comments here. It's great to see you well, how well you both are doing, and beautiful too.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for the comments. Thank you. And thank you everybody who joined. I think we should do this another time. I feel like we covered so
you know
many things, but there are
what
so
we
many
can
other
do? We can do,
questions.
it's centered around things, right? We can do like health and wellness, because people have a lot of questions and they might want.
Are you part of any groups or
I
do you
don't
do
have
any Zoom?
any group set up. I would like to set up a group, but I couldn't figure out how to get it so everyone could join. But I work with the MS Society a lot. I recently did a talk with my mom. I work with MS youngsters a lot. I I'm on like the ELB, which is the Emerging Leaders Board. I'm on the board for Dunk MS. So I'm involved with a lot of things. I also want to let people know if you have some questions and stuff, you feel free to DM me, because I'm always willing to talk. Don't be too angry if I miss some DMs or whatever. Give them back.
Yeah, it's hard to see with Instagram changing
But
constantly, right?
I
Same here.
would 100% do that. I will talk. I've gotten on FaceTime or Zoom with people individually. I saw someone said they would totally do that. So I mean, I will definitely try to do something. I'd love to do like a group thing. Do you have group Zooms and stuff available?
I used to organize Zoom meetups once a week, but life got busy here. But I'm planning to maybe we can do something together. So
Oh, thank
let's
you,
chat about
Forrest. He
that.
just said that. I miss you so much. And I'm so proud of all your real estate stuff. Could we do an open group chat for everyone? Yeah, I would love that. I'd love to have just kind of a forum and people doing the little raise their hand thing in Zoom. Um, did anyone have any more questions for us? I feel like
I will make sure I'll post this video on YouTube. So anybody can watch from the
Also,
beginning
we
if you
absolutely,
missed
like, I
it.
know you and I in both, but like we love questions, and we love topics that you are interested in, because honestly, both of us, our channels and what we're doing is really to help you. So any things that you can say about it um, is fantastic. How to tell kids about MS? You can answer that. I
My that's a great question because I'm still trying to find the answer. My son is 4 years old and my daughter is 2. And I actually got a really good book. I don't remember the title, but hold on one second. I'll bring you the book, which is great. I think it's once if you read this book to
What's
to your
great
children, they
too,
will understand. One
there's
second.
so many, I'll say this to like the audience. There are so many books now that are trying to normalize like disabilities, wheelchairs, situation, and it's really good to educate the kids that there are just so many different ways of life that are normal, and there's nothing ashamed
Yeah,
about. And just explain to your kid, like, sometimes mommy gets a little tired and she needs to take a rest, or she isn't able to play all the time. The kids, will be understanding. You can explain that to them, and as they grow, you can be more in depth.
they are, and it's so interesting. So this is the book. Some days,
What is it
it's a
called?
great book. I love it. But it's
Some days. Yeah, I was
some
gonna say it's
days.
backwards in the camera. That's what.
Yeah. Um, but I actually posted on my personal Facebook account about the book that just came out, and my son's teacher contacted me. They didn't know I have MS because I'm very private on my personal account. I'm open on my MS account on Instagram, but it was interesting how it's an open conversation, and I think that's how it should be. It's not something. Kids are so, like you said, they understand everything and they are so helpful, and when you ask their help, they just, if they live with you every day and if they see what you're going through, they just understand you. And it's, I don't think I think we're making such a bigger deal for not
So
telling them and
someone,
finding ways to tell them
kids who are
something,
16
then
and they
it's just,
haven't told them yet. Hey, if your disease isn't affecting you in a way that the kids really have to see, fine. But and now I don't have kids myself, but I imagine telling them could also be a source of feeling better, right? And it's not like I'm trying to hide this from my kids. As we tell children and they are more aware and encounter this stuff more, that might be an important thing for them to learn as a life lesson also, right? Hey, some people have these kind of situation or diseases, like, I'll be okay, it's fine, sometimes mom gets tired. That could lead to a really positive effect about them dealing with other people who have situations, about them being okay about, like, the kid in the wheelchair, right? It could lead to a lot of empathy, I imagine. So someone said they have more compassion for strangers, 100%. So, it's obviously your journey and one you want to tell your kids, but I think maybe there could be a lot of reward in it. Um,
yes, I completely agree. I was just reading this.
um, 2-year-old probably won't get it. My son's asked why he can't sit on my legs or why I'm so tired. Again, I do think that there's a benefit. I understand you don't want your kids scared, right?
I think it's so much harder for you than for
Exactly.
them.
Exactly. I read an article about Jamie Lynn Sigler from Sopranos. She has MS, and she was talking about her kid, and she just explained, like, sometimes mommy's tired, right? The kid understands it. He's like, oh, mom